Why do we celebrate the 4th of July? It's a serious question. Why does America choose to celebrate as its national festival the 4th of July? I'm guessing probably that until today, none of you have ever been asked that question. But I'm hoping that after today, you all continually ask yourself for the same answer. Well, in order to get at the root of this, let's go back to 1776. In fact, perhaps June 8th, 1776. It's a Saturday in Philadelphia. This handsome red brick building that I didn't intend to go past. This handsome red brick building sits on Chestnut Street, and the Continental Congress are met there. They're debating a resolution by Richard Henry Lee from Virginia. The resolution is very simple. It has 80 words, basically 3 sentences, nothing flowery. It starts out, resolved, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. They're declaring independence from Great Britain. This debate continues on through June 8th, Saturday, and then continues June 10th, Monday. And when it appears as though they're disposed to vote yes, they decide to select a committee of 5 to put together a document justifying, setting forth the reasons for declaring independence. Now, you probably know most of these people. This picture comes from the back of the $2 bill. John Adams, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin. And Congress chooses to recess while these 5, do their assignment of creating this document, and the rest of the delegates to the Congress go home and prepare themselves for what comes next. So we pause for 3 weeks. July 1st, 1776, they're back in Philadelphia, debating this same resolution of independence. They debate through the day and into the morning of the 2nd. They're considering an act of treason. It's a hot day. The windows are closed, barring any chance of a breeze, and the blinds are pulled. They cannot run the risk of somebody outside hearing or seeing what they're doing inside. This is an act of treason against the world's greatest military might, who has assembled its largest expeditionary force ever in its history and sent it across the Atlantic to the colonies. Within the last 3 weeks, over 100 ships have arrived at the shore of Sandy Hook, New Jersey. 53 ships are off the shore of Charleston, South Carolina. And within a month, more than 400 ships, part of the British Royal Navy, are going to be off the shore of Staten Island. This is a massive invasion. The number of soldiers on these ships exceed the number in the largest city in America at this time. But they move forward despite all risk. And on July 2nd, adopt this resolution declaring independence. And then on July 2nd, and these newspapers are so fun to look at back then, the Pennsylvania Evening Post, July 2nd, this day, the Continental Congress declared the United Colonies free and independent states. And then John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail. And may I pause for a point of personal privilege to mention that even some of my heroes have handwriting almost as bad as mine. But we can read this. If you look at the top in the middle, the 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. There you have it. July 2nd, we declared independence. We published it to the world. And John Adams is already preparing for the 2nd of July celebrations every year for the rest of his life. But every good story has some drama, and we're not done with this one yet. After they declared independence, these delegates take up this document prepared by the Committee of Five, which is a listing of all of the reasons justifying their revolution. It has, we could say, 32 paragraphs. The last paragraph is simply a restatement of Richard Henry Lee's resolution for independence. That's already been done. 29 paragraphs, the middle, are the paragraphs that list this train of abuses, the causes, what they have against the King of Great Britain. There are things that you've all heard about, but I'll bet you that none of you have read this whole document. If it wasn't for the first paragraph and second, the only people who would have ever read this would have probably been doctoral students working on American history. These train of abuses include things like quartering of troops in people's homes, cutting off trade, canceling charters, taxation without consent. It's the first two paragraphs that become the legacy of this document. And they were written by Thomas Jefferson. Now, it's a fortuitous event that Thomas Jefferson was even present. He wasn't selected to be in the First Continental Convention in 1774, and he wasn't selected to be in the second one in 1776. He was an alternate. And had it not been for the fact that the royal governor recalled Peyton Randolph, precluding his service, Thomas Jefferson would have never been able to slip in at 33 years of age and served in this Congress. And some scholars say he shouldn't even been on the Committee of Five. That should have gone to the senior member from Virginia, Richard Henry Lee. But Lee was too busy doing something else far more important than drafting a Declaration of Independence. So we have Thomas Jefferson. And we are all fortunate that he was there. Certainly, Abraham Lincoln was fortunate. This is what Lincoln said: "All honor to Jefferson, the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by a single people, had the coolness, forecast, and capacity to introduce into a merely revolutionary document an abstract truth applicable to all men and all times." We know what that abstract truth is. We hold these truths to be self-evident: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Self-evident? They might have been self-evident to these 56 men who on a hot summer day were away from their families and occupational responsibilities and homes, but they weren't self-evident anywhere on the planet. No government, no country had any of these rights spelled out, but they were self-evident. That's the 4th of July. It's kind of interesting to think about all of these celebrations that happen around the world for different countries. A couple examples. France celebrates Bastille Day. That's the day that the assault on the Bastille occurred towards the beginning of their revolution. Mexico celebrates their Independence Day, which was the beginning of their Revolutionary War, their war for independence. Americans, we don't even know when our Revolutionary War began. Was it Lexington and Concord? Was it 1776? We don't even know when it ended. Was that Yorktown, or was it after Yorktown? And most Americans don't know the day we actually declared independence as July 2nd, but none of those things really matter. Because the revolution isn't a day or a moment or a time or a battle. As John Adams said, the revolution was effected before the war commenced. It was a change in the minds and hearts of the people. And on July 4th, 1776, 56 of our brightest, smartest people committed to paper the very thing that was in their minds and in their hearts. And it was the words of America's most famous document that inspired the spoken words of one of our most revered presidents during a time of great turmoil. On July 1st, 1863, there was a major battle of the Civil War fought near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And during this battle, 7 million bullets, like the one I have in my hand, were fired back and forth between 150,000 Americans, leading to the end of this 3-day battle. 51,000 American casualties. And that serious, horrible event led to so many deaths. Imagine living in this small little town of Gettysburg, where at the end of a 3-day battle, everything was calm 4 days before. And now there are tens of thousands of dead bodies and dead horses and ruin throughout your town and the countryside immediately around it. This carnage provoked the need for a national cemetery. And anytime you do something like a national cemetery, there of course must be a dedication. And so we invited America's foremost orator to come on November 17th, 1863, and deliver the Gettysburg Address. You all know him. His name is, oh, that's right, maybe we don't know him. This is Edward Everett, America's foremost orator in 1863. And he delivered a masterful address. It lasted more than 2 hours. I'm told that he delivered it by memory, touched on every important point, had everyone on the edge of their seat, brought tears throughout the audience. More than 2 hours. And when he was done, the President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, was invited to offer a few brief, appropriate remarks. And he spoke for less than 2 minutes. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Lincoln pegged as the founding moment of this country the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the words contained in those first 2 paragraphs. And then he turned, instead of participating in the dedication of earth, land, battlefield, a neighborhood, called for the dedication of every American. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. A task that we're still pursuing. Second only to the Sermon on the Mount, the Gettysburg Address is our world's most famous and oft-quoted speech. It has been memorized and recited by tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of school children, scouts, scholars, soldiers, revolutionaries, and freedom fighters around the world. One example. During the Hungarian Revolution of 1856, the Hungarian freedom fighters were reading the Gettysburg Address over the Hungarian Free Radio and hadn't quite finished it when the Soviet troops came in and cut it down, silencing the last portion of that speech. The tanks might be gone, but the words live. Those words live. And even today, the French Constitution has words from the Gettysburg Address contained in it. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, I think July 4th might be my favorite holiday. It's a low-key day. This is a day when we just get together with family. Maybe we just hang out at home and relax, or go to the park and have a picnic. Some people like to watch a parade, stay up late and see the fireworks. It's not an expensive holiday. It's not a stressful holiday. It's just a family holiday and a day of community. A day where community comes together for pancake breakfasts and parades and fireworks. It's a great, great day. And in this world that we live in that seems to be so divided, and sometimes seems to be increasingly more divided, it would be well for us to remember that our American ancestors, in the stream of our American history, dedicated their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, gave the ultimate sacrifice that we, the living, could carry on the work that they so nobly advanced in binding up the nation's wounds and delivering to every single American the promise of America, contained in Thomas Jefferson's words of the Declaration of Independence. We are, after all, still a country, one nation, under God, indivisible, and dedicated to the proposition of liberty for all. It's my hope that we see the 4th of July as a celebration not of the change of a regime, not a new government, but a people who may not have a common ethnicity or common race or common religion or common ideology, different political parties and ideas. But America is a people that have one thing in common, and that is we have that American idea, the ideal. Those words in the Declaration of Independence that the founders of this country could not fully deliver, and neither can we. But they put us on a course where we are committed to try and continue to try and continue to try forevermore. It's my hope that every 4th of July and every other American day, we commit ourselves to make those words so for someone else. Thank you so very much.